finance minister pretended to have an inflationary epiphany back in November. She admitted deficits lead to inflation finally. She said she didn't want to pour fuel on the fire of inflation. She promised no more deficits after 2027. It's the same deficits that gave Canadians the worst cost of living crisis in history. It only took her 6 months after that to do a massive flip-flop and admit in her failed budget she'd never end her deficit spending and poured a $60 billion jerry can of fuel on the inflationary fire that she started. Will she stand up and admit she misled Canadians and end her inflationary deficit spending?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let me suggest one reason why the Conservatives are resorting to these reckless and desperate and childish parliamentary tactics. It's because they don't want Canadians to remember how badly they coped with the 2008 recession. In 2008, it took Canada 110 months for employment to recover. After the recession, the COVID recession, which was much deeper, it took just 24 months for employment to recover, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Calgary, Forest Lawn.
Mr. Speaker, Conservatives will continue to block this Liberal NDP government from piling on an extra $4,200 of debt on the struggling backs of Canadians. And this finance minister's deficits are continuing to fuel inflation and drive up cost of everything and drive more Canadians into food banks than ever before. Her inflationary spending made housing more unaffordable, and rents and mortgages have doubled because of their failed policies. When will she finally show some responsibility and balance the budget so interest rates can come down and Canadians can finally afford to live and heat their homes?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Canada's GDP grew by 3.1% in the first quarter of this year. That is the fastest growth in the G7. And you know what else, Mr. Speaker? We have recovered more than 900,000 jobs since the trough of COVID. Now, by contrast, Mr. Speaker, after 2008, the Conservatives failed to support Canadians and failed to help Canada recover from the 2008 recession. In fact, as David Dodge said, because it was obsessively focused on reducing the federal deficit, the Harper government unnecessarily contributed to